like and subscribe, and you'll have amazing luck for the rest of the week.
What would happen if you peed on an electric fence?
Most people are smart and know not to mess with electricity. Animals, not so much. Chimps are far too curious not to go testing out the electric fence. Squirrels and raccoons are far too rascally to respect anything. And goats are in a world of their own. Sit tight as we count down 30 moments when animals were electrocuted. If you ever looked up at a power line filled with birds perched on it, you must be wondering to yourself how they can do that and not get electrocuted. It has to do with the fact that the birds are never in contact with the ground or any object that's grounded. Otherwise, they could get shocked. But if one even slightly touched or made contact with anything that was grounded while sitting on the power line, that bird will be toast faster than I can introduce the next entry. Hang on a minute, I think I saw a movement there. My word, it survived the shock. What a lucky bird that was. This chimpanzee enclosure has ample outdoor space for them to roam freely between. But the little one is curious to see what's on the other side of the fence, something which often lands him in trouble. On this day, the baby chimp learned an unfortunate lesson about electricity when he tried to touch the fence line. You could see the mother reassuring him that everything was going to be alright, but he shouldn't be playing too close to the fence line. I hope the little one will listen to his mother. He could have the entire grazing area to himself, but he'll still be straining to get to the dry grass beneath the electric fence. It's as if he keeps forgetting every time how dangerously close to the electric fence he gets. This time, the fence had a lesson for him. The kind of lesson you don't forget. He's one naughty goat, but to be fair, he makes for great entertainment. There's never a dull day when you have such a goat around. Here's Piggy's first encounter with the new electric fence. A good zap trips a loud squeal and he's running back to mom. Things you instantly regret. Well, the thing is with pigs, they can be very troublesome when you try to fence them in. They can definitely do a lot of damage in their relentless search for food, especially when bored or frustrated. However, they learn very quickly not to go near or touch the wire after they hit the fence 2 or 3 times. The dog got the worst shock of his life, and I think he may have finally learned never to mess with the wrong target. Watch this next incident. So, this doggo wants to lay out his territory. That means he needs to mark the space he feels belongs to him with his scent. How about this section right here? This looks like a good spot for a good dog such as myself, doesn't it? Alright, here we go. I hereby claim this section of grass and mark it with my zap! That must have caused a real tickle. Thankfully, it was nothing critical. Just a pretty uncomfortable experience. The next time you see your dog doing the handstand to pee on an electric fence, please tell it not to, after you're done giggling, of course. Is this what electric shock therapy for goats looks like? Honestly, until watching these goats, I was certain that farm animals never enjoyed getting zapped by electric fencing. I can't speak for this goat, but electric fencing can be a good way to keep a herd of goats in line. After setting up the electric fencing, you need at least 1 or 2 of them to get shocked. If they know that touching the wires results in a painful zap, they may be keen to avoid the fence. Well, I guess there's an exception for every rule, and a rogue goat ready to demonstrate it. Watch what happens when hundreds of birds sitting on an overloaded power line suddenly get electrocuted. In just a fraction of a second, the entire flock is seen dropping from the sky on the streets like a cloud of black smoke. Most of them manage to fly off moments later, but some hit the pavement really hard and were left mortally wounded on impact. The circumstances leading to the bizarre fall aren't clear, as much of it occurred outside the video frame. However, viewers commenting on the footage, which was captured on home surveillance in northern Mexico state, believe that the migratory birds were electrocuted on an overloaded power line. The horse owner recording this video clip had an electric fence installed to keep his horses from scratching themselves raw on the wooden fence. But it appears that not even electric shock from the fence will stop this horse from scratching his bum and tail on the rail when he has the sweet itch. When the itching starts, no amount of scratching and bruising seems to provide relief. Horses with the sweet itch can't help but rub or bite excessively at the affected area. The top railing makes for the perfect thing to use for scratching the base of the tail. But the wooden fence may not hold for long, and fences aren't exactly cheap to repair. The owner figured lining the fence with electrified wire would discourage the horses. Alas, this stallion must not have gotten the memo. A guy spotted this squirrel on a sidewalk and started recording it, thinking he'd captured some zany footage, because these guys are ever up to no good, and their mischief is always entertaining to watch. Little did he know that the squirrel was going to climb the tree, hop over onto the electric wire, and get itself electrocuted to death on the transformer. The fellow rushed to where the squirrel had dropped and tried to revive it, but it just remained stiff. The shock was just too much for the poor little thing. At least the guy gave it a decent burial. Air is to us humans what water is to fish, but when an electric current is sent into the water, all the fish are desperate to fly out. The scene looks like some sort of aquatic apocalypse. The stunning video was captured by Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife in 2020. Here they demonstrated how electrofishing is used to control the invasive Asian carp population. State workers used a shock boat to stun the entire school of silverhead and bighead carps that had collected near the dam. Harvesting the fish was easy because they simply floated when they dropped back to the water. This isn't for you if you're the squeamish kind, but if you really want to protect your garden from a snail or slug invasion, I fear you must watch this. Do it for the lettuce. We have here what Netsians are calling a sluggo cutter. That's not a word in Scrabble, but we'll take it. How this works is that the conductors are connected to a battery in an open circuit that delivers an unpleasant shock when these critters complete the circuit by coming in contact with both conductors. You can almost hear the little darlings go, "Ow!" as he pulls his face in after he gets zapped. Is that the face you make when you taste something really sour? Hey, nothing there to be embarrassed about. So these animals are quite the gossips, but when the dog got too close to the electric fence, he got zapped and couldn't wait to hear the rest of the story. Just then, the donkeys burst out laughing, and then the girl joined in. I guess she couldn't contain it. Although it's not exactly clear whether they were laughing at the dog's exit after getting shocked by the fence, or if it was something from the gossip earlier. That donkey laughter sure is contagious. These cows don't understand a thing the little pup was yapping about, but they could see that he was clamoring to meet them. Cows and dogs are common companions on the farm, so it's not uncommon to see these canine and bovine buddies getting along and having fun together. The puppy just wanted his mooing friends to get some love from over the fence, and he couldn't understand why they weren't inviting him over. Poor doggy. He found out too late that the fence was electrified. Boy, that zap really sent him packing. This cuddly puffball often took the lazy dog's route to the house. That meant running through the garden, as she always caused quite the mess along the way. The owners had had enough of the little pooch destroying their plants and dealing with muddy paw prints all over the house, so they decided to temporarily hook up an electric fence unit around the garden. They figured a small shock would do well to remind the dog that there's no way through the garden, and judging by how it scurried back to the house to get Mama the message, it was loud and clear. Gardens know all too fast a scurry of squirrels can decimate a home garden in no time. Say goodbye to your tomatoes, kale, lettuce, romaine, beets, and carrots, if even one of these wily rascals discovers your farm or garden. But squirrel raids don't always have to cause trouble. If you are prepared for the mischief these furry critters bring, then it could be hilariously entertaining to watch them trying to breach the perimeter. I know for certain that electric fences drive them nuts. Pun intended. After a few attempts, it should dawn on him that your delectable vegetables are off the menu. I'll wager this guy won't be coming back for sweet corn in August. This winemaker was losing his tasty grapes to a gaze of raccoons, so he got an electric fence installed. But will that be good enough to keep out these furry critters? The clever cookies they are, the raccoons tested out the new security feature for loopholes. At last, they discovered one spot with sufficient spacing between the wires, just enough for them to get through into the vineyard. Not without getting hit by a quick electrical jolt from the fence. The shock was substantial, all right. But once they understood that it wasn't fatal and that the effects were short-lived, they got to enjoy their daily snack in shock therapy. Have you got any ideas for this winemaker? These wily raccoons seem unstoppable, and right now they're 1 point ahead.
Today for Mousetrap Monday, we're going to deal with the rodent problem here in my own dining room.
This father grew concerned for his children's health when he found mouse droppings in the kids' room, so he ordered an electric mousetrap to deal with the mouse problem. In this video, he explains how the device works to deliver an electric voltage shock that kills the pesky rodents when they step on the metal conductors. He placed the station close to a vent through which he suspected the mice would come into the house. One by one, the mice were lured into the trap and shocked to death until the battle was won. Thank God for science. This yellow jacket would have been safe if it landed on the wire without making contact with anything that's grounded. Unfortunately, it wound up on one spot that could double as a bug zapper. If you've ever been stung by a wasp, you'd not be feeling faintly sorry for this poor guy, and yet I am. This 8-legged critter had tried to edge its way under the electric fence wire when it made the deadly contact and got itself shocked to death. You can still hear the click-clack of the pulsating current in the fence shocking that poor creature at the point of contact. While driving on a silent road, this driver captured on his dash cam the moment a flying goose hit the power line and got itself electrocuted. In the footage, we could see a burst of bright light flashing across the relaxed ambience, followed by a loud zapping sound. The next thing we see is a bird dropping out of the sky and landing in the middle of the road. Its prospects weren't looking good. As the vehicle begins to move down the road, the poor bird can be seen beating its wings against the tarmac. It's not clear if the bird survived that nasty ordeal, but I wouldn't be surprised if it crossed the Jordan shortly after that fatal shock. Normally, sloths stay under the radar, moving about at a slow and calculated pace, which means the only thing that could explain this daredevil's behavior is the Darwin Award tryouts. Either that, or the guy had a death wish, because if he got electrocuted up there, he'd somehow be a little closer to his maker. Unless, of course, he fell and died on the ground, which would completely defeat the purpose. I'm glad the rescuer managed to talk some sense into the sloth and saved it from the deadly mission. Unfortunately, however, the time had run out for this other sloth. Legend has it that he's still waiting for them to send his Darwin Awards trophy. Watch this monkey showing off his tightrope walking skills on the power line to impress America's Got Talent judges who were in town. Everything seemed to be going okay at first, but I don't think Simon Caldwell could stomach what happened next. One wrong move and wham! The show was over. And no, the puffs of smoke you saw coming from the power lines weren't the special effects smokes used in stage performances. The monkey got roasted and fell to the ground. I guess he forgot that he was only safe as a bird if he stayed on one line at a time. Touching two lines at once creates a circuit that results in a deadly scenario. Take a look at how this woodpecker, looking perfectly safe and content up there, gets vaporized faster than you could say zapped, and it wasn't even touching the cables. Well, given a large enough voltage, thin air can get ionized and act as a medium through which electric current can flow in the form of sparks. This phenomenon is what's called electrical arcing. Not only is it extremely dangerous, it happens so fast it's nearly impossible to get away from.
Perched up in that tree, I thought, I gotta get pictures or nobody's gonna believe me.
How the hoofed ruminant ended up dangling high overhead on the power line is a far better story than talking about the one time the deer took down the power grid, which is more times than 0 times that hackers have. Anyway, that's not a flying deer. An eagle dropped in there, which could be the only explanation really, because I certainly didn't climb the distribution pole more than 2 stories high. And sure as eggs, it didn't perform a balancing act on the narrow power line to get to where it was found dangling from. City workers blamed it for the power outage. You have goat to be kidding me. How did that goat come to find itself dangling from power lines? The guys who came to its rescue were left scratching their heads, and then there was the matter of how they would get it down, which puzzled them even more. The goat was so high up with no one reaching it directly. This presented the team with some obvious challenges, so they had to improve using a long ladder to slowly nudge the goat closer to where they could use a rope to pull it to the top of the nearby slope. Eventually, they managed to unhook the goat from the wire, and it thanked them massively, but never did say how it ended up hanging there. They met this other guy on their way home. Hopefully, he'll explain everything. But first, he's got to come down before a loaded semi-trailer truck comes blazing through. This sleuth of hungry bears could smell the beehives from some distance, but the clever bunch suspected that they could be heading into a trap. They investigate the honey bee farm for a bit before one of them grows impatient and decides to go for a tasty treat. Let's just say he wasn't the smartest cookie in the jar. The gluttonous club he is. He got one good zap immediately after he made contact with the electric tape fencing, and that wasn't enough to convince him that the good farmer's tasty honey wasn't worth the squeeze. Not sure if his friends knew what was happening at the time, but if this guy was going to leave the honey, something was up, and they weren't going to stay to find out.
Before we move on, I've got a little challenge for you that'll take 5 seconds to complete. So here's the deal. You just leave a like on this video, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell, and you will get 25 years of amazing luck. Try it, it really works.
After swallowing an adult impala whole, this python's abnormally enlarged belly wouldn't allow it to slither under the electric fence without making contact. The ranch owner found the snake dead with its mouth wide open and its fangs hung up on the wires. According to them, the monster snake had tried to double back for a counterattack when it got zapped by the electric fence, but the wires were ready for it. That has gotta be the worst way to depart this life. During a visit to the zoo, visitors trying to feed the tigers caused a brawl between the animals when a treat was hurled into the enclosure. As each tiger tried to beat the other, they kept getting closer and closer to the fence around the enclosure. The fence was backed by an electric fence system to keep the big cats from climbing over. At some point, the tigers were pushing each other against the electric fence, but it's not clear if any of them actually made contact with the wires until this happened. The cat went stiff and suddenly dropped to the ground with all feet kicking in the air as if experiencing an epileptic seizure. But that was the shock from the electric fence. An update on the video reported that the tiger was okay, and he even fathered a healthy tiger cub. Protea and Jumbo were playing in their enclosure when a freak accident left Protea jammed dangerously in a 10-foot deep moat designed to separate them from zoo visitors. The fire department was called to help zoo workers get the 4,000-pound African elephant out of the moat. A few men had to be positioned inside the exhibit, but first, they had to make sure that a frantic Jumbo wouldn't get in their way. Adult African male elephants can weigh up to 13,000 pounds. Jumbo could crush anybody who tried to get in the enclosure. A decision was made to contain the panicked elephant to one part of the enclosure, using a temporary electric fence. Unfortunately, this was hurriedly plugged into a standard 220-volt outlet instead of running through a fencer, which would have converted the power from the mains into low-amp, short pulses. That proved to be a tragic mistake when Protea unknowingly made contact with the improvised electrical fence when she ran to unite with Jumbo after being rescued from the moat. The whacking current from the mains immobilizes her and causes her muscles to contract, keeping her stuck in the cable that was shocking her. The life-threatening ordeal lasted for an agonizing 30 seconds before zoo workers finally unplugged the cable. Remarkably, Protea survived. Hey, you made it to the end. Check out our other videos for more amazing content. Thanks for watching. Until next time, adios.